Growing with fishes. Growing with fishes.
Alrighty, everybody. Welcome to episode 229 of the Growing with Fishes podcast. This week we have Earl from the Homegrown Weed Summit. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate this, fam. This is Grown with Fishes. Who would have knew?
What's up, man?
And we also have the plague-ridden Marty.
What's up?
Marty's not going to be joining us for video tonight, but he's here with us. Thanks everybody for joining us. For those of you that are still new, be sure to check out the apmjclass.com. We have a full 600 lecture aquaponic cannabis class over there, and then we also have the APMJ Newts if you're looking for aquaponic nutrients for your fish safe aquaponic cannabis grow. So definitely check those out if you're looking for those things. Thanks a lot, Earl, for coming on our show today. You're putting on a pretty cool summit that's specifically designed to kind of help home growers. We're going to talk kind of that as the general theme for this evening. And so thanks a lot for coming on. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing, your mission. I know you got all kinds of wonderful guests on this summit that you've put together, trying to help teach people how to grow at home. There's a lot of stuff out there that's geared towards commercial or other things, and commercial things that are just not geared towards people trying to go 4 or 6 plants. So definitely something that is kind of needed out there in the community, and it's super cool that you're putting this together. So thanks a lot for doing that, and tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Thank you, fam. I felt like there's a lot of big business. Like most of all the summits I went to, or even some of the expos, CannaCon, MJ, BizCon, all that jazz. A lot of them dealt with, like you just said, a lot more larger commercial style grows, but nothing was really there for the person who just want to grow 4, 6, 12 plants at home. And if you are Googling and YouTubing, there's a lot of information out there. It's almost information overload, and some of it's kind of conflicting. And you can spend 4 months, 5 months trusting someone's information, and then find out that that really wasn't good insight to do for this run, and then you have this this loss here. So that kind of was the idea of and I like learning. I truly believe you never stop learning as a grower. You're continually mastering the skill of growing, and I wanted to get a bunch of different growers together and really for them to get their insights on their experiences, their mistakes, some of their techniques, some of their tips, different type of tools, new evolving lights, nutrients, because this industry is moving so fast, and even the home grower needs to continually stay on top of that. So that was the idea: get together at least 25 or more growers with 5 years or more experience to come together and give tips and touch on topics that help people learn how to grow clean, elite cannabis at home. Not swag, but clean, elite cannabis at home. So that was kind of the idea.
Very cool. So what are some of the different, or who are some of the different guests that you have for the summit?
Yeah, we got some big names. We have Ed Rosenthal. He's coming on. He's teaching. I actually have a nice little spreadsheet here. He's teaching on how to automate the environment for optimal growth. So he touched upon different limiting factors of what it takes for your plant to thrive. And man, he's like on a whole nother world of knowledge, man. It's like speaking to like an ancient wise man. It was just incredible. So he taught on that, and the idea was to have different speakers, not touch on every single stage, but each one kind of touch on a different topic, and all those topics come together to teach you pretty much how to grow at each stage of cannabis. Stages meaning you have the foundation stage was really you trying to figure out what equipment what area you're going to try to grow in, what kind of medium you're going to use. Is it going to be hydroponics? Is it going to be cocoa? Is it going to be aquaponics? So those are just some foundation things you kind of want to figure out. And then there's some people teaching on the seedling and the clone stage. And then there's people teaching on the vegetative stage. Then there's people teaching on the flowering stage. And as you know, if you grow, it doesn't stop there. You have to do the drying and then the curing and then the storing stage. So different speakers are touching on that. Another speaker we have, Jesse Peters. He owns a couple dispos and grows over there in Oregon. He's teaching on ways to reduce electricity usage in your home and how to grow more efficient. We have Shane. Some of these last names, man, I'll be butchering, but it's all good. Shane Torpry, from the owner of Micro Lights. He owns the LED lights, and he's actually teaching you not just how to choose his lights, but just how to choose overall, how to pick and choose an LED light, which of course there's a lot of different LED lights now. You can go on Amazon, close your eyes, and hopefully you got the right one. So he gave some strategies on kind of how to do that. Milo, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Talk about conflicting information, man. There's got to be more conflicting information about LEDs online as far as like home grow stuff. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of other stuff that has contradictions, but specifically LEDs, I feel like is a rabbit hole of people disagreeing across the board for like 10 different reasons. So it's always great to have clarity on that. And I think that having like actual engineers, like we had,
yes,
the guys from Steve, what's his name, from Spectrum King, that came on. He did like a 2-hour master class on Brendan. Yes. So it's always great to hear from those people. So that's awesome. I always love to clear stuff up about LEDs.
I agree, Marty. And man, that shit can get complicated too. Talking about PPF, talking about the light, how efficient it is, the different, different bulbs that are being.
Yeah, all that stuff. So the photon flux density versus, like all the different measurements of light and which one, then you can get into spectrums of light, and then you get you're talking about efficiency and how, you basically either get heat or light out of your reaction, regardless, and how they measure that in BTUs and how it affects the number of BTUs you need for air conditioning, or, like just how all those things play together is, it's especially key to understand for LEDs, because you're not talking about just a single light. Like an HPS light is just a single lamp,
right?
Giving off one thing, as opposed to LEDs. Most of the time they're 1 to 300 different diodes that are emitting separately. So it's just really hard to compare them across the board without understanding what all these measurements are. So great stuff.
Yeah, and then even how to measure, talking about lux, if you got like a lux meter and how you transfer that to understand the PPFD, and then even different spots in your, like, it may be cool right underneath the light, but then as you go through the footprint, 12 inches out, 6 inches out, all that changes, and you want to kind of know all that if you're trying to grow elite and be efficient with your grow too. So
right, especially on home grows where because that's really my thing. I've always been limited by a plant count. I've had a medical card here, so when you only, if you're like me and you can only grow 12 plants at a time, you need to get the most out of your 12 plants. If you can just throw out another 10 plants and make up the difference, then it doesn't necessarily matter as much to you. But if you've got to get the most out of them, then understanding where, how to balance out your light in order to get a nice solid canopy and literally get as much as you can out of each one, then you're doing yourself a disservice. You've got to know that stuff to get a nice full canopy.
I agree. And then considering the cost, I mean, we know that these lights right now, I mean, they've kind of came down. It kind of was like back in the day when the first microwave came out. It was like, man, the microwave's $1,000. Like, what? But now it kind of came down to a reasonable price. And they're probably going to come down more, but still, at what point is it worth the investment of the LED versus your traditional double-ended or whatever kind of different light that you're running. So we even like came together with like a calculator on how you can compare lights, actually input some data that you would get from the manufacturer, and it would tell you how much it's going to cost you over 3 years, over 1 month, 4 months, one cycle. So you can kind of see when you're going to get your money back. Also, so yeah, we went kind of deep, and my mind is still spinning from that conversation. And then we got Milo from Big Buddha Seeds. He actually taught on breeding, doing it from a home grower's style. So not necessarily large commercial breeding, but more how can a home grower do this on a home grow small scale. We got into that, and then even just how to produce different types of seeds intentionally. So if you're trying to do, if you're trying to make regular seeds, or you're trying to make feminized seeds, or if you're even trying to do autoflower seeds, if you're trying to turn one of your favorite phenotypes or genotypes into some type of seed so you can kind of store it for later use. We got into how to do that from a home grower's point of view, and not necessarily just for commercial mass market point of view too. So he was very, very generous with his information, and I kind of found that as a theme. People just it's like one love type thing, and everybody kind of wants to help each other, and people weren't just being like, I have a patent on information you're not going to know. People are just more than willing to just really spread the word and teach, because the more we learn, the more we all can be better growers, and the more also we can end this stigma that still is around with we as well. So
very cool.
Yeah, the number one enemy of our industry is education.
True, and just seeing everybody come together, it was just, it's kind of like this big mosaic, man. It's different backgrounds, different states, different countries, different ethnicities, different levels of where you are at growing, but we all still kind of came together for the common purpose of, still keeping the movement of home grow, and not thinking like there's people on the ballot right now who are trying to prevent home growth. It's like, what? Is like, do the few people who grow tomatoes, are they really interrupting the tomato market? No, there's plenty still to go around. So, and we also talked that we talk with people who are huge advocates, just talking about the future of home growing, and how it could be sustainable. And also we talked about reasons why you shouldn't allow home grows, and we wanted, to balance that whole conversation. And still, obviously, it makes no sense to not allow home grows in any type of state. So yeah, so hopefully just having that type of conversation about home grows will help it be easier to make it more of a common sense thing if you're going to pass medical or adult use to include home grow, and that's not fight against each other to not have home grows, as if that's going to jeopardize a huge grows revenue, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's insane to me that the industry has been so willing in numerous states to sacrifice the ability to home grow for a couple of different reasons. I guess just coming from somebody that has always had to do it, even before legality. It's kind of that that hard pill to swallow, that you guys wouldn't have anything without all the home growers that did it in spite of it being legal and getting arrested for it, and the people that did time for it, which luckily was never me, but really that's just out of luck more than anything. So it's insane to me that they would be willing to negotiate away the people that literally had to have given them everything that they have: seeds, knowledge, the ability to grow them, how to do it.
Right.
Somebody who did that illegally and did it at home taught you how to do it, and
Right.
you negotiated them out of it. And so home grow for me has always been, and that includes states that like Oregon that created, may have allowed home grow, but created a toxic environment for home growers to be able to succeed in a medical market, or in a recreational market. So just so obviously biased towards the recreational market that membership is almost non-existent in the medical program anymore. Numerous patients have to buy their medicine at dispensaries at retail costs instead of get them for free. So it really is sort of unacceptable, even though we still have home grow, and that's great, and we appreciate it. There's still other bars above that, as in not regulating them out of the industry and putting them as a disadvantage to recreational growers. It is something that's going to be critical moving forward, and we may not ever get that until we get full federal legalization, because people, it seems like, are willing to negotiate that out just to have it at all. And it's hard to hate on that position, because obviously I don't want to go to an illegal state anywhere and feel like I can't medicate or hide or do anything. But at the same time, I feel like anybody who lives in a state where it's legal and they can't grow it, that's got to be frustrating on another level. So I don't know. It's a complicated and nuanced thing, but to me, I feel like home grow, it is essential to the culture. And I think any state so far that's had significant issues with their policies or getting traction or really rolling out a good recreational program has gutted the ability to home grow, and that's going to be a problem, I think, anywhere that tries to do it.
I agree. I mean, and it's even, it's not like when someone goes with full adult use or medical, all of a sudden it's like magic where there's immediate access to this. A lot of states, some of them take, I think Maine took 5-6 years or something to kind of get going. And
so like here, Florida, and I don't even think Florida is all the way up to ground still.
Well, they're the governor of Maine, and then now you have the governor of South Dakota trying to throw out the legalization bills, against the will of the voters,
Yeah, so for those who need access now, they could just grow 4-12 plants and not have to wait a couple years for this industry. They can wait a couple months and get access. Or if you live in a rural area or somewhere where there's not going to be a local, maybe you have to drive 2-3 hours to even find a dispo. Yeah, there's plenty of reasons, to just to allow home grows. I agree, and I know we're kind of preaching to the choir here, but at the same time, at this point, like, do we really have to compromise that? I kind of got it from the beginning. It's like, all right, let's get what we can to get some momentum. But it's like, what was it like? We're on like over 38 states or something now that has some type of
we're the majority now. You know what I mean? Or you can't say it doesn't work anymore. You can't, all these different things that, that have been rhetoric that, that usage among kids would go up. Well, no, that hasn't really happened anywhere. That real estate prices would go down. Well, no, it's actually the opposite. They go up everywhere that you ever get legalization. They want to say that it's going to increase suicides or other drug abuse, which it hasn't anywhere across the board that they've ever been able to meaningfully document that I've seen. And
reduces opioid prescriptions by 18% on average the first year.
Right.
And then of course, there's always, what about the kids, right? As if the kids are just going to walk in there and like pick a butt off and put it with their cereal.
Right.
No.
Crazy. And then the false equivalencies come in where they're like, oh, we got to treat it like alcohol. Well, you don't really mean that either, because you're fine with alcohol being at the fair. If I go to the county fair, I can watch all of your uncles get trashed and fight each other, but we can't smoke a joint there. So you don't really want to treat it like alcohol. You're not really willing to treat it like alcohol. And you're probably right. It probably shouldn't be treated like alcohol. We probably should be able to smoke it anywhere outside that you can smoke cigarettes.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't need a license to distribute it like you do alcohol. I do agree that we shouldn't treat it like alcohol, but I think even when they say that, they don't really mean it. They just mean that we want to have control over regulating it. We want to be able to decide who grows it and who sells it. We especially seems weird coming from, since most of the resistance is almost always right-wing Republican, in that they don't want regulation anywhere else in any other industry that you ever see anywhere. But then all of a sudden they want every possible cannabis regulation to come into effect as soon as it's something that they, you know, quote unquote, morally disagree with. So, you know, again, the hypocrisy shows through, and maybe I'm sensitive to that today of all days. But I just think that it's crazy to me that those types of things would continue, or any of their other principles, like the, you know, not being able to tell me what to do on my land is always something that you'll hear until it comes to growing with cannabis. And then they'll be like, well, we need to tell you how many plants you can grow. And then we need to tell you what kind of plants you can grow. And then we can tell you what time of year you can grow them. And then how much light, you know, like how much it can smell, you know, like you have all kinds of things that you are willing to put on to me. But if I want to say, oh, you can't graze your cows on public land, you're willing to take your guns to the Capitol building. You know, like I just feel like some huge, there's just some caverns of logic that I have a hard time getting over, given all of the state regulations and issues that have come in, where right-wing Republicans specifically have been willing to completely over-regulate industries and do things that are completely against so-called conservative beliefs. That it's crazy to me at this point, and why it feels great to be on the majority now. Like we used to be, like Oregon was what, the third state to go medical, and the fourth state to go rec or something like that. So obviously, you know, it's good that we're getting over the hump, but I still think in of all the states where we have quote unquote legalization, I don't feel like there's anywhere that, well, maybe Oklahoma, I would say, is close to being like what a model state would look like in terms of
free market.
A constitutionally sound free market.
Yeah.
And they protect gun rights for cannabis medical patients in Oklahoma as well, which is different than a lot of other states. There's 3 separate laws that preserve gun rights for medical patients. So, you know, you can still defend your home and use medicine.
There's another great example.
You know, the same way you can at the pharmacy.
I have the right to bear arms as long as I don't grow weed. That's basically the way that they like to amend it. Even the people there's people with tattoos with the right to bear arms on it, but will still be like, I'm fine with you getting your gun rights taken away just because you grow plants. I mean, that's just mind blowing to me. And that's most states. Again, most states will not, you can generally, like Oregon will let you keep the guns that you have, at least the last I know. And again, don't sue me or cite me or whatever, but you can keep the ones that you have, but purchasing new ones, you won't be allowed to do if you have a medical marijuana card. But you can still, if you don't get your card, you can still go buy recreational cannabis. It's only if you have a medical card. So very, very weird distinction between that. But you'll see that consistently where you are not able to purchase new firearms if you want to be a cannabis producer. Some states it's recreational, some states it's just medical, some states it's just home grow. So if it's a residence, then that's the case. But still weird that they would even be willing to let anyone take anybody's guns, because that's like, again, they have tattoos with this shit.
Yeah, it's a mandatory 5 here in Michigan. Guns and weed does not mix, bro. If you have your card or recreational, you almost have to give up your CCW here, your license. But you know, some people still, you know, take that risk. But again, it's, you know, it's one thing to catch a case where you try to fight it just weed, but if you're trying to fight it with weed and guns, it's a whole nother battle, man. A whole nother battle.
Much bigger headache. And then to go back to how that all started, you know, what about the kids? I know myself, we donate to 2 families right now in the local area who do not have the money to afford seizure medications. Their kids do not have stuff that responds to medications, and we're donating them medicine because we're able to. We're in a position to do that, and it's helping those kids, right? Those are kids that would not have had access until medical came around, to have legal access, right? So this is this is the kind of stuff that can be life-changing for people, and especially for parents that don't have anywhere else to turn.
No, I agree. And to me, for being, black, I say, what about the kids? Yeah, what about the kids? The kids are disproportionately arrested, motherfucker. Yeah, how about us? How about, the ones that are going to jail and getting a damn record, and it's going to mess us up for years and years and years. Yes, what about the kids, motherfucker? This is why, we need to legalize it and allow.
You didn't need any evidence to lock them up.
Yeah.
It goes, kind of like the same thing we were talking about with the people that ran the industry. It's insulting that kids sit in jail, or grown men sit in jail that got arrested as kids, or grown men that got arrested as grown men. It doesn't matter. You have people getting that are making millions of dollars in what we now call legal markets, doing exactly the same thing for these people that are still in prison. And even states that have had legalization for a while still have. Oregon still hasn't cleaned up all of theirs, and we've been legal for a while. It's still going to be a systemic problem, I feel like, until we can get federal mandates on it. It can't maintain Schedule I status and expect us to be able to figure all this stuff out. And it's ridiculous that it is. And just like you were saying, it disproportionately affects large groups of already marginalized people. So it's insulting that people can make such a profit off of it and be fine with all of that and not even take part in it. Obviously, there are some that do, like in the case of Steve, where he's donating stuff back. And a lot of places around here are very active. We have a lot of farms around here that do a lot of social work and reaching out, giving away medicine. But I still can't stress enough that it's nowhere close to what it was for a patient in Oregon previous to that, because they were able to get 99% of their medicine for free, completely free to the patient. And it was an arrangement with the grower where you were able to do that. So the grower would essentially grow more than what the patient needed, sell their access to the dispensary, and that paid their bills so that they could be a grower. And that allowed them to be able to give every patient that they grew for free medicine as often as they need it, every year, consistently. It kept the dispensary stocked for the people that didn't have growers and needed new stuff. So new patients that come in and that hadn't been around for a season yet would always still have access to be able to buy stuff, and we could sell at any dispensary. And now that's just completely backwards. There's it's much more difficult to find a grower. There's far fewer of them because of all the regulations that we talked about. And you have way more patients that are having to walk in and pay retail prices for medicinal flower, medicinal concentrates that they would have been able to get for free otherwise. So there's a whole mechanic to the greed that takes over so many of these different things that I just don't know how we're going to get it until our federal government gets their shit together, takes it off the Schedule I list, and we can all grow it like we do tomatoes, because there's not a difference to me. I should be able to sell it at the farmer's market. 100%.
That's the model. Yeah, I think that's the model. I mean, I get, the fear of having to be, so free as tomatoes, but I mean, it's a plant. I agree that, as like similar to here in Michigan in 2008, even though it was medical, I still was incarcerated for growing cannabis, and actually for having edibles. I mean, meaning similar to what you were saying, was that caregivers were growing, and you can only grow so much here in Michigan. You can grow 12 plants per patient. You can have 5 patients total plus yourself. 12 times 5 is 60 plants. That's 5 patients. plus your 12, 72 plants. But you can only possess 15 ounces. Well, if you're growing 72 plants, I mean, when you harvest, you're gonna probably get some more than 15 ounces.
Better. You did some shit wrong.
Unless you need to call Steve or Aquaponics and get some advice, because if you're not getting, but anyway, so if you're over 15 ounces, it never really said what you can do with it. So there was a clause in the law that said, a patient or a caregiver can assist a patient, meaning you can only grow for your 5, you can only carry for your 5 plus yourself. But who you could assist, such as, if Marty came over here, you weren't my patient, but maybe your caregiver didn't grow what, you needed, or maybe you had a bad harvest, or maybe you couldn't find a caregiver, and you needed someone to assist you. I should be able to give you some of my overages to some stuff that my patients did not need over to you. So long story short, I actually started a delivery service because I grew a lot more than my patients could consume. And the market kind of organically, a lot of different caregivers here in Michigan. There was this organic market where caregivers, it was just everybody regulated each other because you had to have good hospitality, you had to be good product, you had to have good reasonable pricing. Otherwise, you're just like any other business, you're just not going to be able to survive. So the market naturally survived, but unfortunately, I was leaving a restaurant where I had just got a new Jeep Cherokee and the lights came on automatic, and I got valet and they ended up turning off my lights. I didn't notice it, but I got a call for a delivery. So I left where I was, which was a suburban area, to a whole nother suburban area. And I drove like 10, 15 miles without my lights on, because I got into my car. Nothing said, turn on my lights. It was just get in my car, my lights, automatic. Come on. Never got flashed, never got anything, right until I was about to pull into this area, which was called Beverly Hills. Not Beverly Hills, California, but Beverly Hills here in Michigan. I got flicked and pulled over. And this was the first time I actually had an experience. I was a stockbroker before getting into the cannabis industry. I played college football, had a college degree in finance. I had no record. So this was my first really experience of what it's like, I guess you can say, driving while black per se. Got pulled over, and immediately, I was just asked to step out the car. I was like, damn, what was up? Step out the car, get put in the back of the police car, and I end up searching through the car. And I was with my girlfriend, who's my now wife. Even asked her to step out the car, get put in the back of a car, search through the car, and I had my delivery kit. Mind you, you can keep 15 ounces of flour here in Michigan. I had about 8 ounces of flour separated in mason jars. And it was in a book bag. It was locked. You couldn't just get to it. So you had to really do a deep search. You couldn't smell anything because it's all in a mason jar. So there was no probable cause even. I wasn't like smoking and driving, nothing like that. It just decided to search. But they go through it and they say, on camera, because I took this thing to court, and they say, oh, there's weed in here. They find the weed. They go through it. I also had my caregiver licenses inside the bag as well to show that I could carry what I was carrying. I had 2 dozen brownies with me as well. So they ended up, arresting me, taking me to the police station. They could hold you for 72 hours really without charging you. They held both of us. They held my lady, who's now my wife, both for 48 hours, and then end up, letting us go. I explained I was a caregiver, this and that. Let us go, and I went about my business, and I end up being charged 8 months later with a felony, with possession with intent to deliver, because they ended up. Remember, I had 7 ounces of flour, and I could carry 15. They ended up counting each brownie as weed. So I went from having, and each brownie apparently weighed like a quarter pound. It was some expensive brownies. I was only doing it for 10. I was only selling $10 brownies. I guess I should have had $500 brownies. But
recipe, man.
Yeah, so it was a quarter pound. So I went from having 7 ounces to like 72 ounces, which took me out of the Medical Marijuana Act per se at the time. So you had to fight that case. I was the first person arrested for the possession of edibles. There's a whole thing. I'm not trying to be famous for brownies, but yeah, I was arrested for freaking brownies, bro. Brownies. Practice. Man. practice. So yeah.
I mean, it's not just the brownies. I mean, they didn't know you had brownies when they pulled you over, but they knew
Right.
what you looked like.
Exactly. But going to what you said, until it's taken off the schedule. I mean, even
Yeah.
though we think we got medical or it's even adult use, it's like there's still ways for people to still. It's not over. Like you're dropping the ball before you get to the end zone. If you think you can celebrate, and that's cool. Like it's not. It has to get taken off the schedule. Otherwise, people are still going to get arrested and still get prosecuted.
Right. They'll still have the power to, arrest whoever they feel like, and when, whenever they wield that kind of power, they have historically fucked it up.
Yeah.
There's no reason for it in this particular case. And normally, like now, if we wanted to put something on Schedule 1, if we wanted to add something on there now, we have to prove that there's a reason that it should be on it.
Right.
And that's never happened for cannabis. It's never happened for THC. That case has never actually been made. It was literally just voted in. So it's insane to me that they require proof to be able to undo all of this stuff. But it really comes down to, in my opinion, a large part of it is losing that power, that ability to wield that power over specifically poor and marginalized people is extremely valuable to them. They've lived off of it for generations. It's how fathers pass down to their sons how to provide for their families, and it sucks.
Yeah, it was not really about the plant. It was always about the people. And then, like you said, corporate greed too. All that kind of ties into it being one of the greatest lies since, the serpent told Eve that it was okay to eat that apple. This was the second greatest lie after that. Like, yeah, weed makes white women crave after black jazz musicians. Like, what? Is that a thing? Yeah. But yeah.
That jive magic.
Is that a thing? I need to pass out more weed. I don't know. But
right?
start playing the saxophone. Start playing the saxophone.
Learn how to play some jazz, I guess.
Yeah,
that explains a lot about Bill Clinton.
There you go.
But yeah, the summit. So we talked about that. We actually had a couple people from Normal coming on for the summit too. We also talked about living soil. That seems to be a complicated thing. Just getting into what is living soil. Is it soil? Is it kind of like vegan meatless meat? Is it is it really meat or is it not meat? So yeah, that was a good conversation about living soil. Which it seems like you can make a living soil out of soil, but it's a soilless medium. You let me know you got thoughts. It seems to be a soilless medium that is typically made to live in soil. And like the term living soil is more of like a marketing term, but it's still a soilless medium. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I know most of the people that I know that do living soil are doing, compost and some type of base soil mix, and then they they're doing cover crops and making sure they're inoculating with their different mushrooms and like microorganisms and things.
It's definitely one of those terms that I feel like means different things to different people, kind of like flushing.
Okay.
Like some people define flushing as, like only feeding water for the past like 2 weeks of flower.
Right.
And some people define flushing as just having less nutrients available towards the end of flower. Because, for instance, a good example of that is a living soil grower. They're like, most of the time, everything is loaded into the soil ahead of time, and they only feed water.
Yeah.
So they're not, maybe teas or different stuff. But I think for me, the way that I think about living soil is that you are concerned about the microbial population in your soil versus just the nutrient content.
Yeah.
So you're not entirely focused on like the NPK in the nutrients, but you also do things to foster and keep microbial growth other than as opposed to somebody who may grow in soil and feed with and use soil as more like a medium where they're feeding nutrients to it that are already available. So if you're using
Right.
your microbe population to break down amendments into nutrients, then that's kind of the way that I think about living soil is your microbes are breaking down and providing your nutrients for you. So that's why they talk about feeding the soil instead of feeding the plant, is that you're feeding your microbes and having them break down and make nutrients available for you out of raw inputs. So it's a little different. So the versus like somebody growing with like salt-based nutrients, they might turn their soil over at every run or every 2 runs, so they get entirely new soil every time they replant their room versus being able to reuse it cycle after cycle after cycle. So those are the characteristics that I categorize as living soil. And like Steve was saying, usually you grow a cover crop, so smaller plants that you allow to grow up, and then you cut those plants, lay them down in a mulch layer so that they can be broken. Those plants can then be broken back down into nutrients by your microbes and feed your soil again. So you keep your soil healthy and reuse it as opposed to replace it. That's just kind of my own personal way of looking at it. But some people take it like religion, like you have to do it, like you have to grow a specific cover crop, you have to grow clover in order for it to be true living soil, like kind of the same way with KNF. Like there's very specific ways that you are supposed to do fermenting in order to really call it KNF. So that's kind of the way I look at living soil. But it's always great to hear, all the different opinions on and methods on how they achieve that, because just being focused on microbial life, there's a lot of different ways to foster them and different methods of doing that. Finding one existing microbial life in your surrounding forest areas and fostering those into like IMO collections and using those is just one way that you can boost living soil or keep microbials in there. So you kind of end up trying to consolidate everybody's slightly different versions of what it means to have living soil. But those are kind of the common elements that I feel like I see in everybody's definitions of living soil.
That's a good point. And because you even hear the term super soil, and then you have, living soil. It's kind of like, what's the difference between the both of those? Like, would you consider a living soil using some type of cocoa, or would it have to be soil, like silt, clay, and sand?
I think traditionally most of the people would tell you that it should be sand, silt, clay, and something else. Like cocoa functions differently because the cation exchange is a little different because of the way that works. And then cocoa, the quality of cocoa just varies so greatly. Everything from stuff that's very good all the way down to stuff that was washed in seawater that's just loaded with sodium. So you you got to be careful on where you're getting it from. And so it's just, I personally have moved away from cocoa just because of inconsistency of the ability to source it on a regular basis that's consistent. It seems to always vary. Even when I find a good supplier, after a couple of months, it seems to not be that same quality anymore, and it just is frustrating on a commercial scale. So we've just switched over to ordering just good soil and finding usually a local place, but if we can't, then ordering it super sacks at a time or truckloads depending on location.
Nice. Do you typically reuse your soil, or
so usually what we'll do is we'll let it go for 3 cycles. So we'll grow it and then let it rest for 2 growth cycles and then reuse it again. And then this way we can put our beneficial microbes in it. We can also amend it with some extra fish waste and actually rebuild some of the nutrient base into it from stuff from the system. and you know, we do have to buy a certain amount to have that base going. But once you have enough, especially when you get to commercial scales, it's a lot easier, because then I can just take a backhoe, scoop it up, put it into my potting machine. Have 2 potting machines going. We have one that loads the gravel, the lava rock in it and fills it halfway, and the worker takes it off of there, throws the burlap in it, runs it into the next one, and that fills it up the rest of the way with the soil, and then spits it out. And then they're, you know, gone to the track or the trailer, and then now they can be, you know, pumped full of clones and then get put into the beds. Because when we do this, we're doing, you know, hundreds and hundreds of plants at a time, most of the time when I'm working with them in these days. So.
Well, we're talking about 4 to 6 plants here, okay?
Oh yeah. For home grow, yeah, you just get your pot, you fill it up halfway with your lava rock or your hydrogen, and then yeah.
I cycle mine through my worm bins, and I just have enough to where I can always have my worm bins full and all of my plants full. And so when I harvest or I take some out, that soil will go back and get mixed into the worm bins, and then, you know, we harvest the you know, just kind of recycle it all that way. And every once in a while, you know, or I shouldn't say every once in a while, every year we end up adding more, you know, like leaf litter and stuff from around the property that comes into the compost and creates more in the traditional in-ground compost separate from the worm bins. And then we'll use that to mix it in. So we're always, you know, generally just recycling everything through there. And we just have, at this point now, we have enough soil to where it's just able to cover even the soil that's not in use is being recharged. And when we need more, we go get more, and it's just always cycling.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's just so much to growing. You know, you think it's just throwing some seeds on the side of the road and call it a day.
Well, depending on the road, that can work. We call that guerrilla growing.
Right.
You know, and it really can. You can just, there's a number of areas, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, where you can go out and just plant some seeds along a stream and come back in the fall and see what you got. And there's plenty of people that have done that for years and years and years. And I'm sure there'll be more that do it this year. But there's something to be said, like you were talking about, you know, like especially for home growers, right? If you only got 6 to 12 plants, you know, you can't take that kind of risk and only wind up getting 2 plants that actually turn out.
Yeah.
You know, part of what guerrilla growing, what if you actually did it, you know,
Allegedly.
what was you put out a ton of seeds along the whole creek, allegedly. You know, that was the thing. You survived off of, you know, quantity. Everything was illegal. So whether it was 1 plant or 1,000 plants,
Yeah,
didn't really matter. So you could survive off of quantity, and if it came out seeded or whatever else, it wouldn't matter. But, you know, if you've only got 12 plants you want to grow in your garage, you know, you want the majority of them to come out as good as possible. So it's just putting a little more time and effort in than just tossing out some seeds.
throw some Gorilla Glue seeds on a Gorilla Grow. There we go.
Do it.
Get a gorilla glue girl to plant the gorilla glue for.
Right. You guys find yourself when you're trying to dial in? I guess the one thing with like, for example, I use Promix when I grow, and I kind of like using nutrients where I can kind of know where my ppms and kind of know what's going on. Do you find if you're using living soil, it's harder to kind of understand what's all going on in there, or you kind of just got to feel that out? Is that like an art to that?
I think if you have a good living soil, you don't have a lot of those mystery problems showing up over your run, because your microbes are going to help manage the availability of that.
Okay.
As long as you've built a good healthy base, and then, you know, especially if you're dosing with your good, you know, KNF inputs, or, you know, other natural farming inputs, or even some of the AACTs, if you want to go more laning gums methods, definitely are, you know, if you have that in a good cover crop, you're going to have a really good base. And again, you're not going to, those microbes are just going to constantly make those micronutrients available and macronutrients available, much more so than, you know, something that doesn't have those microbes.
Yeah, want to try it, man. I gotta jump out on faith here.
you should do a side by side. You know, just take a couple of plants and um, you know, do the rest of them whatever your normal way is.
Yeah.
Just take a couple of them and do a little side by side and do a test for yourself. I mean, that's one of the things that I really like to do, and I talk about it on the podcast a lot. Is that I wanted to be able to eliminate personal bias in terms of different types of growing methods. So I grow lots of. I don't just grow aquaponics. I have raised beds. I have sub-irrigated planters. I've done living soil. I've done organic hydro. Not very much, but a little bit. But I've done a lot of different growing methods to decide to come to my own conclusion about what I like best after smoking the product that came out of it. You know, kind of like the full test. So, and I really think, all the different ways combined, I guess, is sort of what I look at as aquaponics, because we talk about in like living soil, they want to talk about having those microbes there in the soil because that's what the plant is reacting to when it's creating terpenes or cannabinoids. It's responding to the microbials that are in the root zone. And so increasing that diversity seems to increase Brix levels and terpene levels and cannabinoid levels. And so really the getting that and achieving that diversity also in your water column is really kind of what I think aquaponics does way better than anything else. Even the people that go to elaborate means to mimic nature in their living soil, they still just water it with a hose or a blue mat or something else that, with sometimes just with RO water. And in this case, in aquaponics, in the closed loop and adding the fish and keeping your microbiology in your water reservoir also really mimics the places in nature that grow the best, your creek beds, your river deltas, all of those different places that all those nutrients end up combining together with the microbes that sustain almost year round in those environments. And that's what we look for in aquaponics, is being able to mimic that same thing. So we keep, the water temperature stable enough for the fish to survive all the time. And then so do the microbes. And essentially we never pay for nitrogen. Our nitrogen is almost entirely fish food based. So we worry about mostly keeping nitrogen under control and then supplementing the other nutrients outside of that. So that to me, and then I just use the same systems to help my other stuff as well. So when I make teas or different things for my raised bed, I use water from my aquaponic system that already has microbial life in it, or I'll use some already established media from my media beds that already has my microbes in it. So I try to continue those different processes into other places, but I always want to check those boxes for myself. I want to try growing different ways and then find out what I like best. So that's why if you just take a couple plants and set them aside and finish them all the way out, and you don't even necessarily have to care about just one thing. Like you don't, if it doesn't yield as much as the other one, it doesn't necessarily matter. Like when you smoke it, how did you like it? How high did you get? It's getting high what you want to do. Do you want it to, ease your back pain? Do you want it to give you munchies because you're in chemo treatment? What is it that you want it to do, and do you get the result that you want? Sometimes yield to me just is not as important, but a lot of times you'll find it in places that you don't expect. So it's interesting.
That's great, and that just the collective wisdom of everybody. What kind of was the goal was, we know there's a lot of different paths to the end of the rainbow here per se, or a lot of different ways to skin a cat. I don't even know why that's the same. I like cats. I don't know why I would ever want to skin a cat, but yeah, it's just, I feel like, like Marty, like this collective wisdom will help us all kind of be better. And I feel like sometimes, some people egos get in the way of, like my way is this way and this is that, playing big penis versus little penis. It's like, look, man, let's bring our wisdom together, and like you said, you can test a little bit here, test a little bit there, and see what kind of works best for you. If it's not just the yield, I think that's a beautiful example. Maybe it's just the taste or the type of feeling that you got, the type of effect. Did it help you sleep better? Did it help you calm? Maybe just because you changed the medium, the plant reacted differently. So there's so many different ways to continue to master the skill of growing, and never being a self-proclaimed master grower, but just continually you're mastering the skill. You're continually learning the mastery of growing from home. So
Yeah, it just never stops. I think that it's crazy that people will adopt a single way of growing. Like, I see a lot of people, and I complain about this a lot, so you guys that listen a lot, I'm sorry, but the the people that will do a bunch of research online, and then they'll decide before they even start what the best way to do it is, and they'll do it one time, and then they'll get any amount of result and any amount of success, and they'll claim that, look, they were right and it was the best way that they've ever done it. But really, they've only done it maybe a handful of times, and they've only done it one way.
Right.
And they really don't have much of anything to compare it to. So that's always been a pet peeve of mine, and I always have tried to avoid in my own personal bias in that way too, in that, just do it a lot of different ways, and try to find your own flaws and get better, and don't just half-ass the ways that you might not think are going to work. Like, I kind of did that a little bit with sub-irrigated planters to start with. I didn't have very good success with my first one, but it was because of shit that I did wrong, not because the technology wasn't sufficient. And so once I got better, then the end product got better. So if you're going to take the time to do it, also take the time to do it right. So those are probably, for home growers, I would say would be like two important things, is that, just like you were saying earlier, when you first started out, like, there's a ton of information out there. If you just follow one person, you could very easily be misled for months at a time and waste a lot of money, waste a lot of time, not get the results that you want. So research is great. Conferences are great. Talks are great. All of those things are awesome, but definitely get your hands dirty and have some experience, do some things wrong, do some things right, see the difference. You got to jump in at some point, especially if you're going to be a home grower. If you're going to start a commercial operation, you might even have the operation or the option to hire someone that has done all of those things before and still be successful. But in a home grow, got to get your hands dirty.
Yeah, you got to take action, and that's kind of the format. Like, I didn't want it, even when I talk with Steve, it's just, we weren't just talking just to hear ourselves talk. It was talking to really give actionable content, to be like, look, this is some actions that you can take to go out and try with this information. And like you said, I think it's key to just, you take this information and then now go do something with it. It's not, you can sit here and listen to all the people all day long, all the podcasts, all the lessons, go to all the seminars, and still ain't even pop one seed. It's like, bro, look, pop a seed, man. Take one of these methods, and now obviously you want to be smart about it. You want to just, pop it in the living room and then see what happens, and then you get bugs and mites. But you want to go into it efficiently with an educated guess. Let's say that you have an educated guess with people who've already made tons of mistakes, and that's wisdom. Learn from other people's mistakes. They're trying to tell you what they did, how they messed it up. All right, now try this. It's not just some guy just popped up out of the blue and just trying to tell you his, like you said, he just learned one way on YouTube and now he's trying to proclaim himself as this new teacher. It's, all right, no, these people have grown for more than 5 years and made plenty of mistakes, thousands of mistakes, lost plenty of crops, and then now they're trying to tell you, maybe you should try this way to kind of start off. And then
if your mentor can't say things like, oh yeah, I remember the first time I did that, then you probably don't have a great mentor. That's, you have to be able to have done it multiple times in lots of ways to call it, like, to even think about, calling yourself like a master grower or any of that stuff. It just seems like ridiculous to think otherwise. But yet a lot of people do, and it leads a lot of people down paths that lose a lot of money. I mean, we talk to people as consultants that have a lot of money invested in different operations that don't necessarily have the amount of success that they were sold on, and it's unfortunate. And it can be dangerous on the commercial level. Now you're focused on the home level, which is
Right.
great, but it's important to remember too that some of those people that are growing at their house may not be able to afford to buy medicine. That might be part of the reason why they are choosing to do a home
Right.
grow, is that might be their only option of providing medicine for
Right.
themselves. So it can still hold importance, even if it's not, you know, millions of dollars. Sometimes it can be the difference between someone getting medicine or not. We've had people in our cannabis growers group that have come in to get help because their recent family member or a family member has recently been diagnosed with cancer or epilepsy or any of these different things, and are in, you know, what we call cannabis deserts, where, you know, maybe there's no legality at all, or
Right.
even if there is a legal market, it's hard to access, or it's expensive, or there is no home grow. You know, all those different things become an option. So it may not be important for us to cover things like auto flowers or something like that for a large commercial grow, but for a first-time home grower or a first-time home grower that needs to absolutely succeed,
Yeah.
an auto flower might be a great option.
Yeah, and that's something that, I mean, even for me, it's, you know, I heard about, but it's just, you know, I can only learn so much type thing. All right, look, let me stick with this first, and then now you hear all this, you hear all this about autoflowers now, and I used to think, man, who wants to grow runts? What the hell? Who wants to do that?
I
But
hear
it's
you,
just,
man. I do. I do. And once you get to a place where you understand enough to grow photoperiod plants, there's really
yeah,
very little reason to have autoflower. I definitely hear that. But like this one issue specifically, there was a woman who called. Her husband recently diagnosed with cancer. Didn't feel like she could, you know, was from a conservative family. Didn't feel like she could go anywhere and buy some. Didn't feel like she could, you know, was she gonna walk around downtown and ask people? You know,
right,
like there just
right,
wasn't any other good option. Never grown anything before. Never had a garden. Lived in an urban area. Is like a 4x4 closet that they're able to grow inside of, and they're like, you know, we don't have another 2 months to waste if we have to pull plants out and pull them back in. And so that was one of the few times where I've been like, all right, you know, let's grab some autoflower seeds. You know, you could see that, you know, and hear that she was really concerned about literally not knowing anything and starting from scratch. And
yeah,
that's a lot of pressure when you absolutely have to have a harvest. So there are things about home grow which I think will bust wide open
yeah,
as soon as we get that federal legalization that we've been talking about. So there are nuances to the home grow market, but eventually I think it's going to be huge. I think it'll be bigger
yeah.
than the commercial market.
Yeah, and I think autoflowers itself is going to be huge. I mean, you can see those at your local nursery, like going in there just buying a autoflower plant that's already kind of started, almost like you go in there buying some petunias. I don't even know if that's a flower. That only flower I know is wheat, but
That's all right. You're not calling yourself a
They
florist.
sell spider mites at most garden centers under the brand name Strawberry Starts.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think there's some very, now I learned a lot more about just talking to different growers. And a lot of them just kept talking about autoflowers as if it's like, man, I don't feel like I've been missing out. But yeah, there's so many different purposes. Um, um, Even if you're just, you know, growing for oil and you kind of need the buds, you know, to process that, and the amount of more harvest that you can get per year on a autoflower period versus a photo period. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of stuff, man. Like Danny Danko talking about tips on how to design and lay out your grow room as well. I think sometimes when we are setting up our grow room, sometimes we don't think about, well, you actually might have to walk in there, you know, and actually you might have to do some work. You might have to move around some equipment, you know. You
I
may
have
want
to
to
carry a bucket when I go in there.
No, that's a good point. I mean, the number one reason I see, especially in commercial grows, that I can almost always walk over to the plants that are up against the wall and something's got PM.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not getting good airflow, man, that's just not good. And people stuff them up against walls. They'll be like, we can get an extra 100 plants in here. Yeah, but it's gonna, you know, introduce mold. It's gonna kill the entire room for that 100 plants. Like,
Or even that you'll have to water 7,000 plants if you have 7,000 plants. Like we had,
Yep.
I went to consult on a hemp grow here in Oregon. I won't call them out by name or anything, but their lead grower had basically quit because they had stocked their greenhouses so packed in with starts in these tiny little grow bags, and were trying to hand water them with like a hose and a sprayer, and it had not even accounted for the fact that these plants were going to get bigger, right? I mean, as plants grow, they tend to take up more room.
Yeah.
And so by the time these plants started getting even like a foot tall, there wasn't even a way to walk in there. Like literally, in order to keep their plants alive long enough to get them into the field, I had to install sprinkler hoses above everything and just water them with mist over the entire greenhouse, because you couldn't walk. We couldn't install like in-ground drips or anything. Like it was all 1 gallon plastic bags just packed into a greenhouse without a single thought about how they would take care of them, move them, transplant them, water them, anything. It was insane.
There was no lollipopping in that, boy. I tell you, that's
no, and it was full of males. They couldn't get in and pull out males either because, yeah, it was a mess. But don't do that.
yeah. Just stuff like that. I mean, just especially with new states coming on, and people trying to grow from scratch. I mean, some of these lessons are hard lessons to learn. And there's so many, self-proclaimed teachers. I remember how I got started growing was, there was a closet grower who said he swore he knew how to grow or grow, and I ended up doing a commercial building for my first 72, and partnered with him, and just started walking in the room, and I didn't really know I didn't know how to grow. I just I was going to use his knowledge and kind of learn. And I'm walking in the room, I'm like, man, why are these plants yellow? This doesn't make any sense. Like, I swear plants are supposed to be green.
I'm getting yellow thumb, dude.
Like, no, man. So I get Jorge's book, the Grower's Bible. I got Ed Rosenthal's book, and I'm starting going through the pages, and I get a ppm meter, and a pH meter, and like these babies were maybe 4 or 5 inches. Man, the ppm was like 1200. I was like, yeah, it was like 1200, and like the pH was like 6.97. I'm like, oh man, this guy doesn't even know. I was like, so all right. So I had to take over, and that's how I kind of learned was I had to take over and just kind of learn on the fly. But I ended up saving that crop. It ended up turning out great. But yeah. You just can't just trust everybody's. Oh yeah, I got you, man. I can. I know how to grow. So yeah. So hopefully this summit does help some people. It's free. It's a free summit. You can get all the information. So how is designed each day? It's like a real conference. Like day 1, there's 5 to 6 different videos, different lessons, and then that goes down, and then day 2 comes up. But you can watch as much as you want, and then that goes down, and then day 3 comes up, then that goes down, day 4, that goes down, day 5. So follow like a conference, and then if you did want all access to all the slides, because one of the things with me, like listen to podcasts, it's so much good information. You're trying to take all these notes and you rewind it, and you're trying to write that down and rewind it. So like I decided, if you really want like the slides, everything's taught with slides, so people can kind of follow the conversation. And we're giving those slides out too if you want to actually get those slides. So yeah, it's really meant for people to really take action on what's being said and being taught. So hopefully we all can start growing better cannabis at home and enjoy it better and help end this stigma. So that's the goal, fam.
Awesome. And how do people find that? How do they get there? What day does it start?
So homegrownweedsummit.com. Homegrownweedsummit.com. You can go there and get your free pass. We also are doing a live kickoff this Saturday. I'm gonna go live at 3 o'clock Eastern time, which I think your PST time, I think over there, right?
I am Steve, Oklahoma. Right?
Okay.
I'm on Central.
All right, cool. So it's Eastern. You guys can Google the conversions. You know, Google does that. Here we're gonna do a live kickoff. Just kind of do answers and questions on it. I'll talk about different stages or really give a roadmap to grow. That's on Saturday, but on Monday is the actual start of the event. So Monday through Friday, all next week, 5 to 6 videos a day. We got Tommy Chong on there. We have Jesse Bloom, Swerve from the Cali Connect is gonna be there. DJ Short with Breeding, he's on there. Like I said, Danny Daco is on there. But I mean, more importantly, it's just everyone just coming together, and it's turned to be this beautiful mosaic of people kind of coming together when so many people are kind of so divided with different opinions and things. And of course, I mean, the one and only, I don't know who else has a better beard, but Steve. Steve is on there teaching on hydroponics and aquaponics. That was a great conversation. That to me, I think it's going to be one of the top ones that people are going to watch and listen to, and still be like, "Damn, fishes? Really? Never knew. A little fishy, huh?" So it's great, man.
Cool.
So yeah, hopefully you guys check it out. Thank you, Steve and Marty, for allowing me to kind of be on here and kind of guess and crash your podcast.
Yeah, man.
Hopefully,
Hey,
all these comments are not.
Hopefully, happy to help you promote it and help give people the option for quite a long list of people. I know you got Tommy Chong, Ed Rosenthal, Jeff Lowenfels, a whole bunch of people that we've had on the show, and just super cool to see a lot of those people doing some other types of events out there that are helping just promote the home grower.
Yeah, and even after this, I mean, I just want to see us all just kind of just start working together, like you, Steve, and Jeff, and Danny, and just everybody just having a platform to kind of just come together, and it's big business they're going to have, to me, it's a large ocean. They're going to have this big ass cruise ship out there. It's all good. We're going to come with our Sea-Doos and our little pontoon boats, and we're going to find our spot, man. But yeah, that's what's up. Thank you, Marty. I appreciate it. No worries. But thank you, Steve. I appreciate this, man. This was cool.
Yeah, thanks a lot for joining us. And why don't you give everybody one last time how to find you and what your social media is and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, so the website, homegrownweedsummit.com. Also have a private club here in Detroit. That's craftcannabisclub.com, .org, I'm sorry, org. craftcannabisclub.org. And our social media, we have the Craft Cannabis Club on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, and also Cannabis Therapy Network. That's our podcast, Cannabis Therapy Network. Put that in Google or YouTube. That'll come up there, or even Cannabis Therapy not pod, but podcast. We'll come up there as well. So, and that's really the brand. That's just information, trying to filter out a lot of misinformation, education, a lot of free resources, and then we can go from there. So thank you, Steve.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate you having you on and you taking the time to tell us about yourself and your experiences and the summit itself. So it's been really cool.
Thank you, fam. And I'm catching up, man. I got a little something right there.
A little bit. I think on the mustache side, you might have to.
Yeah.
I got the full Salvador Dali going on.
One day.
All right. Thanks a lot, bud.
All right, family. Peace.
Okay.
All right.
Well, that was really awesome to have him on, and yeah, I'm trying to get a little bit more variety on the show and just a bunch of different stuff. We have some really cool other guests in the queue that I'm going to keep secret until we have them on, because I'm super stoked. Actually, somebody I've been trying to get on for about 3 years is going to come on the show, so that's going to be really cool. Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to mention, if you guys are, especially in a newer state that's legalized, find a local hookah club or a restaurant or a library or someplace you can organize and start a local growers club. We actually started one out here and had our first meeting this week in Oklahoma. And we actually completely filled the room up on a night where we had freezing rain. And it was really just, it blew me away how many people were interested in learning and sharing their experiences and sharing their own information, but just there wasn't a place for people to do it. So I think we're going to definitely before too long have to find a bigger space to try and host it. So super stoked on that. But definitely think about starting your own group. Just find a place, put together a little presentation on just maybe, we started off ours with just here's the different ways people grow in soil and in hydroponics and in aquaponics, and then we covered just a little bit of basics on nutrients, a little bit of basics on pest stuff, just 5 minutes or 10 minutes on each topic. It was super great. And again, super encourage other people to start their own local, we call it the Green Club, Bryan County Green Club, but definitely is a way that you can help organize your local space, find access to good genetics locally, or just learn some new stuff on what's going on locally and help build your local community. I think, I certainly have been craving the living crap out of it since lockdown and everything. And I think things are kind of getting back to normal. As long as you mask up, it's not too bad, and just don't be silly. And yeah, anyways, it's a good experience and a good thing to try and help spread. I highly encourage people to start their own group in their own space. I just couldn't believe check it out. And if you're not, definitely go out to your local space and start one. There was somebody in chat that was asking about drying or something. Let me go back and look. I promised them I'd answer his question. Where was it here? Anyone have any technique for drying? 10 days is a long time. And then having to deal with mold, I think you said, I believe it was. So with drying, we generally like to have a well-ventilated room and then try to start off at 55% and then drop that down to 30%, over the course of, 10 to 14 days, maybe 5% a day or so is a great way to do it. And you'll dry those plants up. You don't want to have them too hot. And again, keep them in the dark. A lot of people put lights on them and shit. Don't ever do that. It degrades the product. So definitely something to keep in mind. And then, if you're dealing with bud rot or mold, your means you're not doing something right when the plant's alive. You want to make sure that you're providing, fungal control for your plants if that's happening. So, Bacillus pumilus in the form of a product like Sonata, or Bacillus pumilus. Bacillus bacillus would be a product like Cease or Serenade, and then Bacillus pumilus would be your Sonata. Definitely something to, that would be the better way to control those as far as sprays that are non-chemical. And that, as long as that was on there before you harvested, you're not going to end up with mold post-harvest, or highly unlikely, I'll put it that way. Let me see here. Is there any other questions in chat before we wrap up the show? It is extremely cold. And yeah, I hope everyone's staying warm. I know it's record colds here. We're supposed to get over a foot of snow, and I'm not looking forward to trying to deal with that. So I hope everyone's staying warm and finding ways to keep the greenhouses warm, because it's a brutal one. That is for sure. A lot of the country. I know you people up in Michigan, man, you guys have got it even worse than we do. That's rough. So, alrighty. Anybody have any last things before we wrap up the show? If not, I think we're going to wrap it up. Be sure to check us out over at the Growing with Fishes on your favorite podcast app. We also have Marty and I have the apmjclass.com. Marty is finishing up getting the last of the stuff up there. He's been sick with shingles, but he's pretty much through that. So the rest of that should get polished up there and get put up. Everything's recorded and chopped up. You just have to upload the sections, and we had some issues with the first round because of the audio up BS. And anyways, it's been a pain in the ass, but it's coming along. Yeah, definitely check that out. And then we have over 600 lectures in that class, tons of different information, tons of handouts and all types of things, reference pictures and all types of different stuff. So yeah, definitely check that out. And apmjnewts.com if you're looking for aquaponic cannabis newts in a prepackaged form. You know, a lot of people just want to buy you know, what people need at the time. So we have a whole different set of nutrients on there based on how many plants you have and how many gallons. So you can, you know, buy those packs as needed. And yeah, and then yeah, wish us luck. There's some cool stuff in the works right now that we're hoping is going to come together. So yeah, hopefully a good year. Just got some cool stuff. Alrighty, check us out again next week at potentponics@gmail.com. Potentponics on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify. I'm exhausted. It's been a very long, crazy day. I've been up since very early and on the phone the whole day. So yeah, we'll see you guys soon and catch you guys again.